this is Tracy from Two Rocks Tarot, and in this week's Let's Talk About, I'm actually going to be talking about what it's like being a public patient in a public hospital when you're getting treated for cancer. And the reason why I'm making this particular video is because I did read an article about how a woman who got breast cancer, she was a journalist, and she reckons that she said she would have been dead if she had been in a public in a public system, in a public hospital system. And I actually found her Facebook page, and I actually wrote to her and I told her that this is just crap and it's misinformation, and it's not something that someone who wants to hear, who cannot afford public healthcare. So here in Australia we have got what's called Medicare, and a lot of our bills are bulk billed. So the only thing that I had to pay in my cancer treatment was the first time I saw my surgeon, the first time I saw my oncologist, and then the rest of it, my all my scans, my what are they called, full body scan, MRIs, where they stick the nuclear medicine in you, mammograms, biopsy, everything like that was bulk billed, and I didn't have to pay anything. Okay, so we're very lucky here in Australia that we've actually got this system of Medicare. And even my radiotherapy, that would have cost $16,281, because I'm actually going through a private company for my radiotherapy, only purely because the hospital where it's provided free is a 2-hour round trip from where I live, and it's only like 10 minutes a day, but you've got to do it every day. So can you imagine driving for 2 hours, get your treatment for 10 minutes and then coming back? It's too much. So they do offer it in Joondalup, which is very close to where I live, and I'll be doing it through a private company. But what they've done is they've capped it, so I only have to actually pay $750 out of that. Medicare covers the rest, so it's freaking amazing, and I'm getting the best of care that you can imagine. So this is why I'm making this video, because I don't want people who live in Australia who haven't got public health insurance, because public health insurance is expensive, and here in Australia it's really hardly worth it. The only, I suppose, advantage that you get being a private patient is that you get a private room. I mean, I'll talk about what happened in my room. And they say, you can choose your own doctor and so forth. Well, I actually chose my surgeon. My surgeon chose my oncologist for me. I'm really happy with the treatment that I've got. I have all my treatment done in Joondalup. So from Two Rocks to Joondalup is about a 30-minute drive, so it's not far at all. I've had my surgery down there in Joondalup. I've had I get my treatment down there. I get everything done that's local, which is really important when you're going through cancer, because you're so fatigued all the time. So, and what I was going to say with the private is, so if, for instance, if I had to have the full body scan that you do, a bone scan when you have cancer, say there's always a gap fee when it comes to private healthcare here in Australia. So even though you're paying for your healthcare, if it was, sometimes there's, say the test cost $500, well then you still have a gap of a few $100s. So really private should cover the whole lot like Medicare does, but it doesn't. You've always got this massive gap that you have to pay, and it's not really worth it. It's not really worth it. The only time that I said to my husband that I could see it being worth it is having a private room, and I'll touch on this later on in the video. But as far as if you are a cancer patient and you are a public patient, don't read. I've read things online that say that public patients get outdated medicine, that it's just bullshit. Outdated medicine, they don't get treated the same, you're more likely to die. It's really ridiculous, and that's why I thought I'd make this actual video. I have had nothing but the best of care since I've been diagnosed. I really have, I should say. So, from when I got diagnosed by my local doctor, we went on the computer, we had treats public patients. That's make more sense, because there is a quite a good hospital, it's called Hollywood Hospital in the city. That's the one that I could go to get the free treatment. But the doctor there, who's very well known, she doesn't see public patients, she only sees private patients. So the next one was actually, and I said, well, I want someone local, and he's been absolutely terrific. I can't mention names, of course, because I don't want to, get sued or anything like that, because who knows with public liability. So from the moment I seen him, everything just sort of snowballed very, very quickly. And So I just to give a sort of brief recap, so I saw my doctor because I woke up with a sore breast. I didn't find a lump. My breast was killing me when I woke up. Made an appointment for an ultrasound. It got better, I cancelled it, but something told me to make another appointment, which I did. Had an ultrasound, and on that very day that I had it, the doctor clinic rang me up and said that I should go and book in for a biopsy because they found something. Of course, I shit myself. So that was on the Wednesday. The nurse who works at our local doctor got me in on a Friday to have the biopsy, and on the Monday I found that I had breast cancer. Now I've read some people have to wait a couple of weeks or more to get the results. Okay, that's how quick I got mine. So then on that Thursday of that week I went and saw my breast surgeon, and then it started a battery of tests, of having a bone scan. You feel like you're a rotisserie chicken, things spinning around and around you. Mammogram. I had a fine needle biopsy because one of my adenoids was raised. In the end, I ended up and when I had my mastectomy, I had 19 taken out and 10 of it had cancer. So, and as you can see, and the first week, so this was in December, and then the week just of Christmas week, I had my first chemo, because it really hit me hard, the first chemo, and I remember on Christmas Day was the first day that I could actually eat properly after I had it. So, and then after that, on March, I decided to have a mastectomy because I had 4 rounds of chemo. The tumour grew, it didn't actually shrink, and it sort of panicked me a little bit. But I went and saw the surgeon. He reassured me. He said it hasn't grown much, but you can continue on with your 4 rounds of chemo, or you can have surgery. And I said, well, do you think I should have a mastectomy? Because, and he said, I think that'd be a good option for you. So that's what I did. So the 10th of March, I had my mastectomy. And this is where the fun starts. So when I had my mastectomy in the hospital, it went like clockwork. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it, but as I did have a PICC line, you can still see the scar from it in there, and a PICC line is where it's quite a long line that goes up to your heart, where you get the chemo put through, and saves you having a needle in the back of your hand all the time. Now, I didn't know, but when you have a shower, when you've got a PICC line, you've got to wear a plastic cover over it so it doesn't get wet. And I noticed that the covers were getting actually a bit tight, but I only opened a new bag, so I thought, well, it's just that. But what actually was is I actually had an infection in my PICC line that didn't get picked up, despite weekly having nurses come to my house. We've got a company called Silver Chain here. If you are a public patient, they come to your house, they change your dressings, they flush out everything. I had one nurse that came who didn't flush it like the other nurses done. She didn't do it properly. Usually when it's like a little cap, they would get a what's it called, disinfectant type, like a wet one, wipe it all out and everything. Well, she didn't do any of that. So I still think that she was awful. Actually, she was the only one that I had that was really, really slack and blasé and didn't want to really talk or anything like that. And I kind of feel like it's her fault, but of course I can't prove that. So anyway, go in there, have my mastectomy. I'm brought up to a beautiful room. I think it was a private room, and they brought me some sandwiches and soup to eat, and all of a sudden I couldn't stop shaking. I literally couldn't stop shaking, and all of a sudden they alarm. I can't remember this bit, but apparently alarms went off. They kicked my husband out of the room. My heart rate went up to 168. My temperature was climbing. And because what they figured out later on happened is because my PICC line was infected, when I had my anaesthetic, it pushed the infection right throughout my body, so I went into septic poisoning. So they rushed me. Luckily, because I was very close to the ICU, and the ICU people, I tell you, they were there within seconds, with absolute seconds. I had 8 people in the room shooting all this medicine into my arm to try to get my heart rate down, and then they whisked me away into a high care unit. And I woke up again really, really hot, and they put ice packs all over me because high temperature when you've got cancer is deadly. They ended up bringing a doctor down, and they spoke to somebody in infectious diseases, and they just said to take me off the antibiotics that they were pumping through me and put me onto something different that was made to actually fight the infection that I had. And that's what suddenly started getting me better. So I spent 3 days in the high care unit. and this is when the fun and games start. So after that beautiful room that I did have, I suppose the best way to describe the room that I ended up getting put into was what my husband says would be in the bottom floor of the Titanic, where they kept the really poor people. That's what it was like. So they're pushing me in my wheelchair. Now I have to say that all the nurses, all the doctors, everyone were absolutely fantastic. I can't recommend high enough how well I was treated throughout the whole lot. Nothing was too much trouble. They were absolutely fantastic, particularly in the high care unit, okay? So anyway, they're wheeling me down. They go down a corridor, and the first thing you smell is urine, a really, really strong urine. It's like the carpets look grubby, the walls look grubby, and I should point out that I was a cleaner for many, many years, so I know when things are clean and when things aren't clean, and but believe me, this wasn't clean. So they bring me into a shared room with another lady who had cancer as well. So I get put into the bed, and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, God, it looks pretty grubby, hey? It looks pretty grubby. And for one thing, I'll talk about that a little bit later once I got to know my roommate, because she told me this. So I get put into there, and if you had to ask, and the nurses, so it was, the ratio was 10 patients to one nurse, okay? They were absolutely flat strapped, so short staffed, it's not funny. They were having people from other departments to come in and try and fill in to help, and of course if you ask them questions they couldn't answer it, because they don't know nothing about the cancer side of things. In fact, most of the nurses didn't. I had a drain attached to my to drain out fluid, and it would look like a little what do they call, little hand grenade. I had to show 3 nurses how to empty it. They didn't know how to even empty that. And it's really easy. You just flip the lid and tip out the fluid after they measure it, because when that fluid gets to less than 30 mils over a day, then they can take out your drains, okay? And that was done actually at home through Silver Chain again. So that was the thing. Now, just for me personally, what they had to do with me, I had to have antibiotics through a drip 3 times a day. So this is one nurse for 10 patients. And imagine if you had to do this to all 10 patients. So they hook me up to the drip. They give me my painkillers. They give me my anti-inflammatories. They give me antibiotics. They have to take my blood pressure. They have to take my pulse, because I was having trouble with my whole pulse rate. And if you ask questions, they'll say they'll let you know, and they never get back to you because they just haven't got the bloody time. They just have not got the time. So I was talking to the lady next to me, and she is from a country town, and she usually does go to, I think it's called the Charlie Gardner Hospital. She said they have a dedicated cancer ward there, so they don't even allow flowers into it in case there's any germs or anything into the flowers. This is how careful we have to be when you've got cancer. She said really for us two to be sharing a room when we are so sick and have no immune system is ridiculous, which is true. I never really thought about that because I, of course I haven't been in that type of situation before. So so she said, we shouldn't even be like that. And because she was having trouble with her bowels and everything like that, and bless her, she had some Glen 20. Every time she used the toilet, she Glen 20 everything in there. So she was so terrified of giving me any germs, because of what I went through, because I was still sick, because I ended up spending 7 days because of this septic poisoning. I had to make sure that everything was, out of my body. So that was one thing. I was in there for, so I was 3, so then the next day a cleaner come, and I overheard my roommate saying, she said, I've been here 4 days and there hasn't been a cleaner that come into the room. She said, see that yellow stuff on the floor? That's actually bodily fluids from my stomach. I kid you not. And she said, oh my gosh, so she went and she cleaned, and I'm telling you, it was a very, what I call, and if you are a cleaner you know what I mean, a top and tail. It wasn't a very deep clean, so it's just a quick, just a top and tail, and how to describe, just a very light wiping over of things and stuff like that. The shower, they've got a chair in the shower and a curtain that you can put around it. So if that's the chair, well, the toilet is like that close, okay? And so it's really impossible to, and I didn't even feel safe to sit on the chair because I didn't think it'd been cleaned properly. So I was there, so I was 3 days in the high care unit, so that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's another, say, 4 days in there. So twice it got cleaned while I was there, And so really it's only like 3 times in 7 days, when really in a hospital we should be cleaning every single bloody day. So the rubbish was overflowing in the bathroom. I had to ask for towels too. The towels didn't just, clean towels just didn't come. There was no, actually no, there was some like type of baby shampoo in there that you could use. I actually thought it was hers, but it was for both of us. So again, you're sharing things when you shouldn't be sharing things. So that was a real shock, was the cleaning side of things, because you have to be so clean when you've got cancer. It's just, like if you go to the toilet, you've got to make sure you really wash your hands. I mean, really, really get into all the, you've got to be careful of everything. So that was one thing. The nurses are beautiful, but they were so pushed. They're just so I can't believe that the shortage of staff was absolutely amazing. I just could not believe it. And then on the very last day, the cleaning was atrocious, and then the very last day that I was there, a doctor, because I was supposed to have, because my surgeon told me that when I'm in there, he'll get a physiotherapist to come and see me so I can do exercises with my arm, because you can get what's called edema in your arm, where it all gets fluid and swells up, or when you've had your lymph nodes taken out. And so you do a set of exercises, and I kept asking, I said, how come that's physio? The very last day that I was there, suddenly this doctor appears, and she said, I'm from Simon. He sent me to come take a look at you. And I said, hello. And she organised everything there and there. She got me to see the physio. He just dropped off a pamphlet of the different exercises that I could do. But, I was there a week. I could have been doing that all week long. So anyway, and she's checked me all out and everything, and finally I got discharged because of her, because my liver count was a bit high. Now I've always, funny enough, had a little bit of a little bit raised, but I had a scan, I don't know, about 2-3 years ago, and there wasn't a fatty liver or anything like this, just the way it is. But it's gotten raised more, and she said to me, well, that's because of the chemo. The chemo does that, even though I had a bit of a break. I think I had a month break before I had my operation, because my surgeon wanted to make sure that I was at the peak of my health, as much as I could be, for the operation, as healthy as I could be. So that was what happened in the hospital. So that, the food was good. I have to say, the food was really good. It was a good variety. It was really, really good. I enjoyed the food. Haven't got a complaint about that, but the cleaning was atrocious. It was really, really atrocious. And Aaron said to me, she said, I wish you could have stayed in the room that you first went up to, it would have been good. And I did say, because I got a bit paranoid, because my roommate kept saying, we shouldn't really be together, we should have our own room. But no, there's no way I could get my own room. Hey, the nurses at the desk said, well, I know what you're saying, but I can't do it. Yet there were empty rooms. There were the empty rooms of 2 empty beds in there that they wouldn't put me into my own room. So anyway, I get discharged, and 2 weeks later I went and saw my surgeon. And as soon as he walked in the room, he said, you know what? He said, I did not know that you had septic poisoning until the day you were discharged, when I sent that doctor to see you. And I said, you're kidding. She goes, no. He said, when we got all these forms back on you, they was asking each other, well, how come she's on all this antibiotics or anything like that? He was really peed off, because he actually is a private doctor as well. So what he does is he does, I think, 1 or 2 operations a week for public patients, and the rest of the time he does all public operations up in the hospital in the city. He said he didn't know until the day I was discharged, and that's why he sent that lovely lady, I can't remember her name now, but her doctor who works with him, to me. He said, we could understand why you're under all these. They didn't send him a discharge form, so on the discharge form it's got all my, what happened. Luckily, Silver Chain, when they come and see you, because they take your blood pressure and everything as well, she said to me on my last day, she saw me to take that with me to the doctor so he can see what's going on. So the receptionist there could actually photocopy my discharge form, because he didn't even get that. So he was not a happy man, I tell you what. And I think that's atrocious. I mean, I have to ask, would have that happened if I was a private patient? I don't know. But he did not know, because I got a bit pissed off, actually, because I thought, geez, I nearly freaking died, and he hasn't come to see me, because he didn't bloody know, because the mastectomy and everything went like a dream. Like, it was perfect, nothing went wrong in that, but he didn't know. They didn't tell him. Now, I have to tell you, his office is across the road from the hospital, because when I used to go from the hospital to see him, I just walk across the road. It's walking distance. There's no like major distance between the two, and of course with email and everything like that. But so there was no discharge form. He didn't know until the last day, and and he wasn't a happy man. So that was pretty bad. But I have to say, I do believe it is from the staff shortages there. It's absolutely chronic over here in Australia, and it probably is worldwide now, particularly with COVID. But here, where I live anyway, at least, the COVID's not such a big deal. There's not a lot of COVID going on, you know, where we are. But that was my experience of a public. And I've always been public. Now, when I was a kid, my mum had private health insurance, but I still remember when I had to get some stitches when I was 13, waiting 13 hours to get my foot stitched up. So there was still always this wait time. You've always got to wait. Of course, cancer's different. They can't wait because you die. So they get you in and out, you know, as soon as you can, which has happened with me. I'm very, very happy with how quickly everything got done so I can get better, you know, on the road to recovery. But as far as the cleanliness and everything like that was atrocious. And even when I looked at what she was mopping the floor with, it was just one of those, I've got this type of mop, you know, where it's a Velcro thing that sticks on underneath, and it didn't even smell like anaesthetic. There's no anaesthetic smell or anything like that when she washed the floor. It was very, very, it was actually frightening, to be honest, to see just how grotty the hospital was, you know. But I don't blame the people who work there. The people who work there are beautiful, and they all do like 12-hour shifts. All of them do 12-hour shifts, and they're just running constantly back, forth. The only thing that I would suggest is that, you know how you used to see in the, particularly the Carry On films, how funny they were. But you know how you used to have to be quiet in the hospital? Well, far out, you know, it's people who are ill, and so many of them yell and laugh at all hours of the night, that wake loud enough to wake you up. Now, I don't sleep with my hearing aids, so you can imagine how loud it would have to be for someone to wake me up, you know. If I sleep at my stepdaughter's house, I don't hear my granddaughter wake up in the night. I just don't, because of my hearing, I don't hear it. But in the hospital, it's constantly waking up. They just don't think about, you know, people are trying to get well, and they're all yelling and carrying on from all over the shop. So that was another thing that was quite annoying as well. But, you know, the nurses were beautiful. You know, the doctors that I did see were wonderful, especially the ICU ones who came in and helped me. And he said to me, he said, "You're very, very lucky." He said, "If it had happened where I live here in Two Rocks, I wouldn't have made it." That's how close it was. Very, very lucky. So I'm very, very grateful, and I've got nothing but appreciation for the nurses and the doctors and everyone who saw me. But by God, this government needs to do something about the staff shortages. Even, I mean, you know, just to have the bloody thing cleaned properly, you know, especially with COVID as well. It needs to be cleaned a lot better than that, and particularly for cancer patients and other patients who are immune compromised. You know, it's not clean. It's not at all. And I don't think it would have been any different with the private part. I don't know. When my stepdaughter had an operation, she was in a private hospital. It was a beautiful room and everything like that. It did look a little bit cleaner, but that's not the point. You know, there's people that are crying out for jobs, you know, and you know, I'm sure they could find cleaners, for someone to clean the hospital. I would do it. It wouldn't bother me to clean a hospital and, you know, spend a bit of time actually doing it properly. So that was my experience. Very, very disappointing on the cleanliness side. Very, very disappointing on how short-staffed that they are. And that they couldn't answer your questions because they didn't know, or they just ran out of time and they couldn't get back to you. And they did warn me when I come up into the ward. She said, "It's not going to be like you were in the high care unit, where, you know, you're mollycoddled." That's what she said. She said here, and that's what she said, "We've actually got 10 patients to one nurse." And I thought, wow, you know, with all the stuff they had to do to me, and then probably, you know, others that are a lot worse off than me. But anyway, I thought I would share my experience as a public patient, but I wanted to make it very, very clear that I'm very, very happy with the nurses, the doctors and everything, and how quick the ball went rolling from diagnosis to the surgery to getting treatment and everything like that for it. So, but my heart goes out to just how pushed they are for time. You know, there's just not enough time. We have a lot of ramping problems here where the ambulances are just queued up outside the hospital trying to get in, trying to wait for a bed. I could have been out of the high care unit after 2 days, but it took 3 days because they couldn't get me a bed. So there you go. But if you are a cancer patient and you have to do everything public, please don't worry. You do get the best of care. You truly, truly do. So until next time, this is Tracy.